Alrighty, welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from Chicago, Illinois. This is Khalid Musali from Compliance Group. We'll be starting shortly, so please give us a few minutes. Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Today I want to thank my guest, Garth Conrad, Vice President of Quality at Flex Solutions. And we're talking about enabling advanced manufacturing industry 4.0 with digital CSA. I know for some of you folks are used to compliance group webinars about CSA and how to do CSA, etc. Well, it's a little different. We're beyond this. We're really in the advanced manufacturing and industry 4.0, and therefore Garth is here to help us really understand how CSA was a fundamental transition, and that helped them move the needle within manufacturing. In today's agenda, we'll be introducing Garth. He will tell us about his a little bit brief about his background and Flex. We'll be talking about advanced manufacturing industry 4.0. What is it really, industry 4.0? What is CSA? Very brief, because I know we've beat that horse to death for many years now, and many of you in the industry have implemented CSA, but now we want to take it further. And then we'll talk about Flex's experience in its CSA journey and how they accomplished it, and how the paradigm shift gained value for Flex. And finally, we'll talk, or actually Garth will discuss digital versus paper-based and the path forward. Just a little bit infomercial, so I've earned it here. On Compliance Group, our mission is to enable the fastest path to quality excellence. And our vision is to make quality frictionless. Compliance Group, we're headquartered here in Libertyville, Illinois. Very simple. We are I'm going to call ourselves a medium boutique consultant firm. We focus on helping organization with quality and compliance services. We do staffing, business consultant, and technology solution. So keep it at that. We'll provide you the link to see who we are and the growth that Compliance Group has accomplished over the years. And now our guest, Garth, please introduce yourself to our audience and let us know a little bit more about Flex and your role and who Flex work with. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Khalid. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on where you are around the globe. I am Garth Conrad. I am the head of quality for Flex's Health Solutions business. Flex is a contract manufacturing company or contract supply chain company, and we service multiple industries. The industry that I focus on involves all of our medical device customers, our pharmaceutical customers and such, really the regulated portion of the business. Flex overall has about 100 manufacturing sites globally. So when we talk about implementation of systems and processes, it's a broad scale in terms of the things that we need to look at. And we have about 170,000 employees. So when we talk about training and education, it becomes a real challenge as we work globally in terms of the things that we need to do. So I'm happy to be here today. Really looking forward to sharing some of the experience that we've had with implementation of CSA and what the benefits have been to Flex as we've gone through our process.
Awesome. Thank you, Garth. I appreciate it. And it's always a pleasure seeing you and talking to you. My name is Khalid Musali. I'm the Executive Vice President for Corporate Development and Operations Have a history in CSV, CSA, spent about 20 plus years at Baxter Healthcare and various other industry in the life science. My responsibility is to really focus on our clients and bring the latest of guidance and regulations and help our clients really understand what's new, what's upcoming, whether it's from the FDA, MHRA, and other regulatory agencies around the globe. So enough about me here. Let's move forward with what is Industry 4.0. So of course, most of us will go on ChatGPT, we'll go on Google and find out what is these things, right? So I did a little search. Well, not this time, about 3 years ago when Garth and I did a very similar presentation over in San Diego with Connects. And I just like the way it really display how the industry moved since 1784 till what it is today. So that's really my vision of it, and it's super exciting where manufacturing has been and where it moved. So what I want to do is to turn it to Garth because he's the expert in manufacturing, and I would like him to talk through this slide a little bit because I know he liked it when I showed it to him back in the days. And the next slide, he will talk a little bit more specifically on what Industry 4.0 within Flex organization. So go ahead, Garth.
Sure, absolutely. You know, so the interesting thing about the Industrial Revolution is really been these changes from 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, and you look at the major change to what's occurring in industry or what it means to personnel that are there. Mechanization, you know, was huge when you went to some form of creating cars or creating repetitive operations in terms of production. It was a huge change in the thought process that people went through. The next one, electrification. This is when you started to bring in all the machines rather than working off of water power or whatever it may be. It gave you the ability to do more things, automate more, bring in assembly lines, operate for a much longer period of time, and really spread across the globe. So you didn't need to be near a source of water or whatever else for your solutions. Industry 3.0, I think everyone is aware, automation. This is when the robot generation came in. And obviously it impacts certain industries more than others. But if you look at over time, what's occurred since the 70s is automation, or the robots have now begun to expand out well beyond just assembly lines. They're going into individual machines in terms of automation. They're going into your warehouses and how they're moving products around. And frankly, as you've seen with things like Amazon, we're now introducing robots or drones that are delivering products to you at home. So that has continued all along. If you look at Industry 4.0, which is where we're at today, Khaled, if you can go forward to the next one. What it really brings in is another component of this. And what I'll call it is, if you look at the way that it talks about all the papers that are out there and what people will tell you, it's about cyber physical systems. But an easier way to think about this is really about data. We now have sensor technology and equipment, sensor technology on automation lines. We have vision systems and cameras and such that collect enormous amounts of data about how your production is running, how the equipment is running, and what's occurring with the products that you're producing. Now that you have all that data, you have to do something with it. And that's where a number of software systems and artificial intelligence, machine learning, all of those other capabilities have begun to come in to help you as a manufacturer do better things and really understand and control your processes more. So today, we're going to talk a little bit about CSA, because as you get that data, as you have these sensor technologies, what you're incorporating in is much more software as part of your infrastructure and the way that you're managing your business. more software, more systems, more validations, more activity you need to go through. That's why CSA becomes really critically important in terms of what you're doing. If you can do it more efficiently, if you can do it more effective, if you can be faster at what you're doing along those lines, it helps you as you drive towards achieving Industry 4.0 standards across all of your sites.
Yeah, that's really awesome way of putting it, because I think the industry in general, right, we're somewhat single-threaded looking at it from a CSV to CSA perspective, but we're really not looking at what's ahead, why CSA is in place, right? It's really the foundation to all of those things you just really talked about, right? To do it faster, better, risk-based approach, and this is just a solid example of what it means. So really, how does it enable advanced manufacturing, and specifically in your organization?
Yeah, and this would be one thing I would encourage people to do is with this advancement in technology, with the advancement of Industry 4.0, you have to begin thinking about your processes differently. You know, in the past, I've been in medical device for 20 plus years, and everyone's used to, you do process validation, IQ, OQ, PQ, and you do software validation, and you go through all of your stages following your waterfall process and the activities that go along with that. But the thing I would encourage you to do is as Industry 4.0 comes in and you're merging much more what your process is versus what your systems are, so they're fully integrated in terms of the way that they function, you have to begin thinking about your control process much differently. So this little pictorial sort of brings that in, where on the left-hand side, you have the physical aspect of your process. These are the things that you've normally done when you get product requirements, you establish a process sequence, so a physical process sequence, which equipment, which lines, which automation, which conveyor belts, whatever you're doing in terms of what you're setting up for your system. And then you go into process development, your dry runs, and your validation. Coinciding with that now, since you're looking at sensor technology, which feeds back into your process, and you're looking at the data that comes out of your process and really helping to manage the things that you're doing, you have to think about the electronic sequence of things that are occurring at the same time. So those activities have to be done in parallel. When we look at risk management then becomes not something that you're doing separately for process and software. It becomes one that you're looking jointly what the outcome is and where your challenges could be, whether it be physical on the equipment itself or it be electronic in your software systems and the way that you're coding or the way that you're running routines in your processes. As you get down into the testing piece, this is the same thing we've always done. So even with CSA, you're still testing. Obviously, you look at unscripted versus scripted is a little bit different than what we've done in the past, but the nature of being able to go through development, test the code or test the process, and then go into a verification or validation are the same things that you've done in the past. Now you do them jointly together because they each impact the outcome of the other. Then finally, you get into the validation portion and defect tracking, which is the normal things that you do. So this, again, I would encourage people, begin to think differently about your processes because they are so integrated together in the way that they function.
Absolutely. And I like when you get to defect tracking, because technically this is one of the 5 things about CSA is to actually accomplish less defect in production. So that kind of takes us into this classic just view of the 5 things about CSA. And this is, by the way, the only thing I'm going to talk about CSA, I promise. The first one is risk-based on the impact to patient safety, product quality, and data integrity. It calls for the least burdensome documentation, right? And of course, if you're doing the kind of work that Garth's organization, I really think you need to minimize a lot of documentation because it's a fast-paced manufacturing environment. It reduces the paper work, leveraging the unscripted and the ad hoc testing that just Garth mentioned, and it results in less issue encountered in production. And we've seen that over and over with multiple organizations, realizing the value of less defects in production because of the unscripted and ad hoc testing. And finally, FDA, ISPE, GAM, and the industry have embraced CSA already. So it's not like, should we do it, should we not? Should we wait for the final release or not? And as a matter of fact, the final release of the draft guidance is slated on to be the end of fiscal year of 2024. Not confirmed, but this is what we've been hearing. Not too many changes has done to it at all since the draft. And again, this is the information we're getting from the FIXA team and Cisco Vicente that it's in progress and there's good news coming out of it. So again, this is just to give you that little update on what's going on. And of course, as you all know, GAM 5 Second Edition highlighted everything in the draft guidance and basically focusing on critical thinking within the GAM 5 Second Edition. So again, this is something for everyone to consider. The next thing I want to talk really briefly and fast about it, because I want to turn it back to Garth, is the CSA Transformation Roadmap. From a compliance group perspective, this is really the recommended approach. Awareness, it's very important for people to understand what is CSA versus CSV. Assess your current process. Align to CSA risk-based approach. We all understand many processes, policies, procedures, template within any organization is about 20 plus years old. It is time to assess and align to the current practices. Pilot. Test within a change control for a specific type of software. See what the result is. See how much time you've saved, right? And the risk you've done. Train on CSA processes and implement. But don't stop there, because this is where you're going to stop doing the paper process. And I hope you don't do that and you go directly to digitize it. And this is, again, what Flex has done. And that's where Garth is going to walk us through how Flex, and every company is different. So we're going to see what Garth has done.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, Khalid, what I would echo just back on that is that roadmap is critically important. And I would encourage people to think long and hard as they go into implementing if they haven't done this. This is the approach that Flex took. The only thing I would add in is we actually moved the digitize earlier. When we got into our pilot, we actually did digitize and paper-based at the same time. But the process, the sequence, the way to go through training, the way to go to implementation, this hits all the highlights of how to be successful as you're going through a transformation at your company.
Awesome. So you actually took our recommendations. Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
this is a
good, imagine that.
This is a great infomercial.
Yep.
So again, I think would like to hear from you here about your experience in the CSA journey and how you guys went about it. Did you really accomplish the 80-20? You know, that went to 20-80. So would like to hear a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think as you look at this, these numbers, the 80-20, have been thrown around for, 3 or 4 years now as industry has looked at the CSA journey. And I think, there's a lot of skepticism from companies that haven't been through the process as of yet about whether you would actually see the benefits or that amount of benefit as you're coming along through the process. Well, like the companies that have gone through the transformation before, I'm here to tell you this is real in what you experience in terms of the documentation changes, the testing changes that you go through. And we've actually got some real world examples that we're going to show as well here. The benefits that come back to the company in terms of the things that you're doing with CSA and the way that your information connects together, this risk-based approach to really focusing on the critical things as part of your process, rather than trying to overwhelm everybody with paperwork and signatures and everything that goes along, it really focuses the organization on what's critical and making sure that you remain compliant, but that you're also driving what's important to the organization. So your outcome is really what's needed rather than what you thought it was. So, It's not about creating binders and binders and binders of paper to overwhelm any auditor that comes in. It's really about creating what's critical and making sure that your systems function the way that you want them to.
Awesome, thank you. Remind me to ask you afterwards, after this example here, from an adoption and organizational change management perspective, because I think those are critical. Please can you tell us a little bit? I know you went from the digital paper to finally digital, so please just proceed with that.
Yeah, so this was actually the outcome of one of our very first test pilots that we ran. And what we have is a comparison here between doing the activity under CSV versus doing the activity under CSA. And there were a number of people at Flex that were involved with this. When I look at JK and Divya and such that really drove this effort, got to give them a lot of credit because they were first out of the gate in terms of application of it and using it for really the intended outcome, what we were driving after within Flex. This gives you a few ideas of what we looked at for reduction in amount of work. So that clock time that you see there was real. That's what we experienced. So when you look at labor hours that go into actually conducting an activity, I know people don't typically go after CSA to say, I'm going to reduce work content or I'm going to reduce work hours, but that's something that we experienced. And part of it, as we've looked through why, we look at the coordination efforts that we were doing before on paper-based and under CSV and the way that sequencing occurred or the way that things had to transition from one phase to the next phase. And what we experienced was a lot of wait time or a lot of unused time of our personnel. By going to a much more streamlined CSA approach, going to the risk-based approach, so we really focused on scripted and unscripted testing, making sure that we were driving after the right things for us as an organization, we experienced this. And this has been repeated since then. So this wasn't just the first out of the gate. This has really been the shift in the process that we've experienced overall.
Excellent.
Now, I will tell you, as we go to the next one too, what's critical about this for us, again, we didn't look at this as the ability to reduce resources. That wasn't the focus on what we do. If you really look at it, at the time when you're doing validation activities, it's really about the speed that you can get through with that. As a contract manufacturer, what's critical for us is how quickly can we move our clients' products into production. The faster that we can do that, the better off it is for them. So if we're able to take hours, days, weeks out of a schedule because we've streamlined the processes, made them more compliant, made them more focused on what's really critical to the outcome, we deliver a better product, but we're delivering it faster to them, which is really what they want and we want in the long run.
And I'm sure the entire industry is looking for such result. This is great. Thank you.
Yeah, so this was our second test case. This was our digital version. So we use Polarian for the digital portion of this. For the paper-based, I say it's paper-based. We actually had a macro-driven Excel spreadsheet that interlinked some things together, but that was our paper, and our digital is using Polarian and all the added functionality that comes along with that. You can see we've gained some equivalent or even a little bit better benefit by moving to the digital version. All the benefit stuff that's captured here on the right-hand side, I don't think it captures some of the stuff about improved traceability, improved reusability of information from one project to another project. Those are all the things that this digital tool brings in that allows you to move much faster within a project, but between projects as well. But these are real world experiences. When I look at this example, this again came from another couple from our team, Raj and Kanan, in terms of the application and the things that they drove along this line. Give them a lot of credit for what they've been able to achieve and how they helped the organization go through this transition into using the digital version of the CSA in Flex. But it's been a tremendous benefit to us in terms of what we've seen internally.
This is amazing data, and thank you for that. The one data that I don't find is defects, tracking defects. Is that captured anywhere else?
Yeah, so we don't have it in here. There were actually two sort of metrics that we saw associated with defects. One, we did reduce defects, but like any software, I hate to say that you're never going to have it, or you'd love to never have a defect, but you're going to have one. But I'll give you an example of what we experienced on the digital version of CSA. As we got into and identified a defect, sometimes it may be in the way that you wrote a test case, so it's not a real defect, it just has to do with your documentation. Sometimes it's actually the execution of the software itself and a change that needs to be done. When we look at the paper version of how you deal with a problem, how you recreate test cases, how you reschedule the activity, then do the testing, and then come back and look at approval, a cycle along those lines for us can take a week, can take a couple of weeks in terms of that piece of things. The thing that we've experienced with the digital CSA portion is by collaboration online, the teams got in, reused test cases that were defined before, created new test runs, circulated it out for approval, and got back into testing immediately. And when I mean immediately, this is something that's done within an 8-hour period versus it taking a few days to cycle around outside of the system. So working digitally allows a much higher level of collaboration between your teams and gives you much more benefit as it's coming out of that. Yeah, these digital versus paper. So that was one. I think the other big one that I would bring in is the reuse piece of things. So the advantage is, as you've gone in and created your paperwork, created everything that's all interlinked digitally, as you're looking at a change that's occurring in your system, you're able to trace down to exactly what the impact is and the test cases that you've already created in the past. So the reuse of those is very easy with drawing them in, creating a new test run, re-executing them versus the change that you've made. It's something that actually saves hours and days of time that you probably don't think of before, especially if you're working in a paper-based environment where you've got to recreate a new document and reroute it in your doc management system and all the sign-offs and everything that goes along with that. Digitally moves much faster on that reuse piece of things.
Absolutely. And I just want to add a little tidbits here, maybe an infomercial for ISVE GAMP. The ISVE GAMP subcommittee is working on a paperless validation guidance that's supposed to be released the end of 2024, beginning of 2025. And the reason for that is to really encourage the industry again to unthink anything paper and move forward with paperless validation tools, and pick whatever you want as long as you pick one. But for that reason, I want to ask, why Polarian ALM at Flex? Can you share some of that?
Yeah, so there was a piece of it in that we already had Polarian that we were using for other situations. So we use it in our design control process where we have an interlinked design history file of everything from user needs all the way through the design verification validation work that we do. But it's a natural fit when you look at Polarian and its capabilities. Polarian was really built as an application lifecycle management tool. So when you look at the core of what's there, managing software, managing the ability to collaborate, trace, and reuse content that's there, it's just naturally built. By establishing a template, which is really what you need to do for CSA, that interlinks the activities of what you want for CSA and the validation testing and such, it allows you to very quickly move from a paper-based into a digital world. So it's an excellent tool. Like everything, there's a cost that comes along with it, which sometimes can be a constraint in terms of things. But when you look at the benefit that comes out of that to an organization, I would tell you the benefits far outweigh what the costs are to be able to get into a digital tool like that.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I think you really touched on it, that Polarian is not this paper and glass type of tool, right? It's really moving away from document centric to data centric. I think that's really, really important. I think this really kind of highlighted the core pillars of Polarian, right? Collaboration, traceability, and reuse. Therefore, this is definitely going to result in shorter time to whatever that objective is. Great, thank you. The one additional thing here that I always like to kind of remind our attendees and from the industry about what's next, how to move forward. Those really just recommendation from our friends at the FDA, Cisco Vicente and Daniel Walter. And I'd like you guys to really just, like where else is additional clarity needed, right? A lot of folks are still thinking about the guidance, oh, it's a new guidance, what do I do? Well, just look at these little 5 boxes. It does help out a little bit. Guidance is not regulation. Unscripted does not mean undocumented. We continue to talk about that, right? Think critically, but don't overcomplicate things. Increase the agility and flexibility, and Garth had definitely established that today. And the one thing I remember from John Murray, who actually wrote the GPSV back in 2002, don't do nothing. You need to do something, right? So that's what's really important. I just want to leave you with that. Garth, any last things you may recommend to our audience here?
No, the only thing I would say is for the organizations that haven't begun the transition to CSA, I would tell you wholeheartedly move forward. It takes time, and I've seen a couple of questions come through in the chat box. A lot of what you're going to experience with your organizations is for people to unlearn what they've learned in the last 20 years. So, and what I mean by that is everybody has been so risk averse in the past that sometimes you don't necessarily believe the risk matrix that you established. So when you're looking at what you can do for unscripted versus scripted, a lot of times people are very conservative and you end up, increasing the risk levels that you have or understanding along those lines. That all comes through education, awareness, the templates and the things that you create in the system to help facilitate the decisions that people make. But I would tell you what's important to understand is this is a transformation in culture within your organization. It's not as simple as just change a procedure and you're done. You're going to have to teach people to do things differently than what they've done in the past. It has been so ingrained in industry on how you do CSV that unthinking that and following CSA approach takes time. And that's why I tell you, you got to start the process within your company, begin that transition, make sure you're teaching, make sure you're educating personnel, and check back in. Use an expert from the outside to help you out. Compliance group is a great team in terms of knowledge and expertise and being able to assist in transitions that companies are going through. But having that coach, that mentor to help you through that process is very critical.
No, thank you for that, Garth. And I know I've seen a couple of questions. I'm sorry, I think we're running out of, but I'll just briefly answer some of those questions in terms of an auditor asking about, you're not following CSV, you're not following CSA. Just remember, nothing really has changed. There is no migration or total leave behind CSV and move to CSA. What's written today in the draft guidance has been written since 1997 in the GPSV about risk-based approach. CSA just brought it to the front. Marketing of the computer software assurance to really help the industry rethink what we've been doing. Many of the industry, all other industry, finance, automotive, aviation, all of them, they have embraced the CSA concept, the whole unscripted testing, the whole ad hoc testing. So there's really nothing has changed. And again, as you establish your processes, your procedures, that's what's defendable. You just make sure they're defendable. And to Garth's point, you really need to train and think differently. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Garth, you want to say something?
I was just going to say the thing I'll add in and reiterate. So again, remember, outside auditors are really concerned that you're following your own procedures.
Exactly.
So create solid procedures, follow what you say you're doing, and you'll get through the audits without any challenges. The whole notion of conversion from CSV to CSA from an auditor perspective, they really don't care. What they care about is that you're applying a sound approach to what you're doing, you're documenting it appropriately, you're following your instructions in what you've done. At least that's been our experience. So.
Yeah, and Garth, there's that question for you, and I know some of you might want to drop, but we'll go ahead and ask it. When doing risk-based processes like this, teams often take a conservative route and identify everything as high risk. What did you do to allow the team to better critically think about the real risk related to the process to really gain the benefit of CSA?
Yeah, so educate is what I'll come back to. If you look at when we actually first created our procedures and went into our very first dry run pilot, we were very similar to that. The teams were still thinking from a CSV mindset of things, and we had a lot of things that came out as high risk. We went back in, we redid it in education, we re-brought in some experts and went through the process again, make sure that we had sound sort of advice and recommendations that were in our procedures to help people as they go through this. And really it's about educating people about a different way of thinking than what was done in the past. And risk is not a bad thing, but you have to have that graduated sort of risk level, and you have to apply it consistently in what you're doing. So again, I'll come back. It was education, awareness, and reinforcement as we went through this to be successful.
Definitely, and this reminds me again when I asked the question earlier about adoption and organizational change management, and really what we've seen through our journey helping client implement CSA. You cannot miss out on the OCM piece of it, the training, the awareness, the communication. It is so important for an organization to actually believes in it, right, and adapt to it. So the question to you, Garth, what has Flex done over the past couple of years now from an OCM perspective?
Yeah, so we've got a great group, our corporate team that's involved with ownership of the CSA process. And they're the core team that's been educating the personnel. They're the ones that ran the pilots as well. So the names I mentioned before, they've been the real change agents in terms of driving this. You need to have that in your organization. You need to have your internal experts that are going to work with teams, are going to educate them, and are going to work with them on their first projects as they're moving through this transition so that they really understand the application piece of that. It's critical. Think of this, like I said, as any other change management activity that you would do in a large company, and the things that you need to do to educate a broad audience, clear messaging, making sure that you have SMEs to assist, and repetitive. You've got to do it more than once. They're not going to get it from just one training session. So you've got to establish that process that's going to help drive that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we've reached our time here. I know we're 8 minutes over. Garth, thank you so much again for helping really address this topic. I know Industry 4.0 has been, we've heard of Pharma 4.0, Validation 4.0, not too many folks within the industry of us doing enterprise system have not really thought about too much about Industry 4.0. So thank you for educating us on that. I don't see any other questions, so I think we can call it a day. Appreciate you again, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.